It's all happening at the Politicrat Daily Podcast online store, and you can go there right now at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. Lots of good new items, brand new, designed by yours truly. So please head to the Politicrat Daily Podcast online store now. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Friday, March the 12th, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, looking once again at Sarah Everard and also the COVID-19 American Rescue Plan. Two different subjects, one episode. Who would have thunk it? So the very sad news came across early today. In England, it was during the afternoon hours that the remains of a human being that were found in Kent in England earlier this week were confirmed by police today as belonging to 33-year-old Sarah Everard. And it's just heartbreaking. You know, this is a really heartbreaking moment for that family and very painful that Sarah Everard is now confirmed as deceased. And as I alluded to yesterday, and by the way, my deepest condolences to her family. This is a very difficult day for them. This is a Friday for them that is going to be an unforgettable Friday. And for any woman, and for the family of any woman who has been killed, whether it's through partner, domestic violence with a partner, or by a partner, I should say, or whether it's something like what's happened to Sarah Everard or any other woman, you know, no matter, again, the background, whether that woman is trans, whether that woman is black, white, Latina, Asian, you know, whether that woman is a native woman, gender non-conforming, you know, whatever that might be, you know, whatever the, whomever that person is, you know, it's just really horrible. I mean, this is something that I really do feel strongly about, but it's not just because I feel strongly about it. This is a society of human beings, and we have to do much better than this. In our day-to-day lives, we have to do better. But what I need to really hit home about once again here, and I think I did it yesterday, but I really want to do it again, more declaratively and emphatically, is that the institutions of a society, of this society, of English society, of you name it societies, are patriarchy. I mean, they're pure patriarchal societies. And those are run by, for the very most part, white men, white heterosexual men. And everything is centered around that identity. Centered around that identity. So that all of the people, or most of the people, who are white, male, and straight, are afforded all kinds of breaks and privileges by the very system that's been founded in their image. A system founded on violence against black people, against women in general, against native persons, against brown persons. And a system consecrated in the violence against women. I mean, there was genderism really before there was racism, if you really look at that. I mean, let's be really brutally honest. This aspect of I'm different from you and you're different from me is rooted first in gender. I mean, male, female, female, male. I mean, it's rooted in that. And then all of the violence that was and still is visited upon women. This dominance and this power that men are using, weaponizing, exercising upon women. Power, violence, control. And it doesn't have to be a metropolitan police officer doing it, even though the police have been doing things like this forever in the UK, particularly in England. And I do think that this guy did it, Wayne Couzens. I do think he's guilty as sin. And I know that in England, you're not supposed to say that. Well, I'm not in England, even though I am from there. This is something, of course, because they've still got the police two more days to question him. And if they don't charge him, they have to let him go. I think it's 2 more days. I forget how many. And they're still questioning him as I do this podcast episode. But I have a feeling that they're going to charge this guy. I mean, he was found banging his head on a cell. I mean, he had head injuries is what was said. I'm assuming while he was in a cell. Well, what do you think that means? They didn't release how those injuries to his head came about. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're alone in your cell and the police aren't going to release the information as to how he got head injuries and if it's true that it happened while he was in his jail cell, I think you can easily put 2 and 2 together to figure out what this guy must have been trying to do to himself. But I don't want to talk about him, even though I think the focus should be on him. I'm going to focus on the real problem, which is not only this one police officer, but a whole system behind him. And that's the point that I was conveying or trying to convey yesterday, is that these are institutions that protect this kind of violence. This is the institution, these institutions produce this violence. These people who are in power, who commit these violent acts, these murdering acts, or whomever did this. And I think it was this particular officer or you know, this suspect. Let's not call him an officer. Let's call him a suspect. This suspect, because that's what they say about us. This suspect, I think, did it. And this is an attorney saying that, you know, innocent until proven guilty. So listen to me, right? I am saying, but seriously, I think he's as guilty as sin. And the fact that his wife or the companion, I believe it's his wife, who was arrested and released on bond, on remand for court, shows you that they've got some kind of court case against her that they're going to be presenting at a later date. And I think right now, what they're going to do is formally charge this suspect cop, Wayne Couzens, with kidnapping and murder of Sarah Everard. I think that's going to happen in the next few days. Over the weekend, you think it could happen perhaps, maybe tomorrow, maybe Sunday or Monday. I think it's going to happen. So if I'm wrong, I will get back on here the day that it happens or doesn't happen, rather, and I will absolutely say that I got it wrong, and I'll be willing to be pilloried about it because, yeah, it's a risk to be pronouncing somebody guilty before they're even charged. And of course, even when they're charged, you still have to go to the Old Bailey or the Crown Court or wherever and have your case tried. Because again, you know, until a jury or until a court deems that he is guilty, that's the way the legal system works in England as well. the crown system. As soon as they do that, until then, I'm talking about him again, aren't I? He's innocent until proven guilty. But look, the institutions are the thing, right? The institutions. And as was pointed out on Sky News in a really fruitful discussion, I thought, yesterday, amongst at least 4 women and 1 man. I don't think the man really brought much at all to the conversation. Quite frankly, the conversation should be held amongst 4 men. Obviously it's important and it's essential that a woman is present and women's voices and female voices are heard. That's obvious, right? And trust me, women have been talking about this now for centuries. So they have been well heard. It's a question not only if men want to hear them and then do something to change their behavior, and some, I'm sure, have, some of them, but it's also a question of A, the rest of the men doing so, and B, the institutions changing their behavior. Because if we're asking men to do that, and men must do that, of course, then we should also be demanding that institutions change. And we should be changing them. And even more than that, we should be getting rid of a patriarchy. That's what I didn't get to yesterday. Because at some point, you've got to look at the very system itself that undergirds this behavior. The advertising that creates an atmosphere like this. I'm not absolving men, but that advertising is invariably mostly created by men. And they invent these conditions, create the conditions to invent a world that is shaped around the white, straight, male gaze. And invariably that will also include a worldview that is shared by men of all backgrounds. Whether they're black, brown, Asian, native, whomever. But that worldview is adopted, obviously, by those men because they also have male privilege. And male privilege is the real crux here in terms of men using their privilege and behaving and to behave differently. And you don't have to use your privilege to behave differently, although you could. You have to use your privilege to look at yourself and recognize that you have the privilege. And I know a lot of people don't recognize that because that's what it is. It's privilege. But there's a lot of unlearning that has to be done. And the actions have to be taken. Now, the actions can be taken immediately, but it shouldn't just stop with the change in your behavior. It's got to start and continue with your worldview and how you shape your worldview and how you change it. That's what has to be done here. And once any individual man or boy is taught to shape his worldview and change it and shape his worldview into a view that recognizes every human being, respects them, and understands that everybody has to be seen, heard, and respected and treated with decency. That's got to be the starting point, and it's got to be the starting point at a very early age. And I think that's the key here. I think that's the point that I really didn't get to make yesterday, because I just absolutely had it yesterday with all of this. And I still stand by everything that I said. I think collectively men have failed. And I'm not going to change that view at all, even 24 hours out. And I've been reflecting on all of what I said yesterday. And I know that some people listened to that and thought, oh, God, I know they did. I do some self-reflection. I do. You don't think I don't? I do. And I continue to do it. And there's more to come. Oh, I'm bragging. I know. But I've got a long way to go. I've got a long way up. I'm always learning. We're always learning. I'm always learning. Always. I'm always trying. I'm always falling on my face. I've got to keep doing better. I've got to. And I've said this before, I cannot be satisfied with, they're not giving myself a pat on the back, but I can't be satisfied with the bare minimum. I'm doing something. No, this is we're all works in progress, including yours truly. We're all works in progress. You can't settle. And that means in any area of your life, you can't settle. You've got, yes, you can reflect and relax and all that and have fun and all those great things. I'm so, fortunate to be able to do those things. A lot of people can't, especially now. But you've got to keep pushing for better, and you've got to, from a small age as a boy, I was always taught to respect people and that they respect you. And you've got to start small. Boys have to be taught from an early age. It's not about protecting a girl or protecting a woman. It's about you, young boy, young man, being in charge and in control of yourself and respecting a boy, a girl, a person, respecting people, respecting girls, respecting women. That's where this starts from. At an early age. I'm saying when you're 5 years old, you're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. Those are the ages that you start teaching a boy. As soon as he turns 4, 5, 6, 7, that's when you shape that child. You shape that boy and you drill it into him that he must treat girls as equals, because that's what they are. And this is how you behave. You don't throw your weight around. You're not a man if you do that. How about we teach boys that they are not men if they are throwing their weight around? That's not masculine. That's weakness. What if we taught men, or certainly boys, because you've got to start there. What if we taught 5 and 6 year old boys that it is weak to throw your punches around? What if we taught that amongst all boys so that there would be less physical violence? Do you think that would make a difference? Or don't you think we also have to challenge this society as well concurrently? Because it's no good teaching that to a boy and then you're not challenging the structure and the conditions and the environment and the institutions and the system that brings all of this about, that creates the stimuli around that boy, that gives him this, what he thinks is this permission to be violent, and to be violent particularly against girls and women. So there's got to be concurrent demands and challenges. And one of them is easier than the other. The easy thing to do, I think, is to teach that boy at 5 years old that, no, this is not what you do. Here's what you do. And here's what you say. And we have to get you to express your feelings. And we have to get you to view girls as human beings. We have to get you to respect girls. And we have to get you to respect women. And we have to get you to understand that they are equals to you and you are equals to them. You are equal to them. And then we have to challenge the patriarchal structure itself and, as many would say, dismantle it completely, destroy it. Because this system ain't working but for 2% of the world. Or, it ain't working but for men. And again, it's a certain type of man, right? Because this patriarchy thing is ingrained in black men. It's ingrained in brown men. It's ingrained in all men. Some men choose to act upon it, and some men don't, right? But the reason I said all men yesterday is because collectively we've failed. I didn't use the word collectively yesterday, but we have failed. You know, and it's probably a dangerous analogy, but is it that different from good cop, bad cop, this notion that, oh, all cops aren't bad cops, but the ones who are supposedly good do not turn in the ones who are bad, do not speak up? Probably a bad analogy, because there are men who don't do this, who do speak up and run organizations. So, I do recognize that. But again, I think we've failed. Hundreds of years, and you still got men out there in 2021 saying, oh, I'm surprised at my own obliviousness. How can you be oblivious to violence against women when A, it's been going on for centuries, B, it's reported on, Sarah Everard is but the latest and sadly will not be the last, and C, how many high-profile cases of this have you heard the last 3 or 4 years? Harvey Weinstein? Jeremy Piven? I mean, Brett Ratner? These are all film people I'm rattling off for those of you who don't know. I mean, I can go on and on. Bill Cosby? Kevin Spacey? I mean, what? People, oh, you're oblivious? You're surprised at my own oblivion? I mean, Kevin Spacey is just they're all disgusting, aren't they? And, at least one of them, if not two of them, are behind bars. Or one of them certainly is. There's so many more. There's so many more of them. And you've not heard of people like Charlie Rose. You've not heard of people like, you haven't heard of Matt Lauer? I mean, if you're in a different country, maybe you've not heard of Matt Lauer. If you're in the United States, you definitely have. If you're in the United States, you definitely heard of Charlie Rose. You've definitely heard of Les Moonves. You've definitely heard of Mark Halperin. You've heard of Donald Trump. You've heard, I can go on and on and on, right? You've heard of Bill Clinton. You've heard of Andrew Cuomo. Jason Miller. I can go on and on for days. Scott DeJarlais. I can go on and on. That's a Republican politician, that last one. And Jason Miller was with the guy that just left the White House a couple of months ago. And if you Google him or whatever, search him, your skin will crawl at the results. I guarantee you. It's disgusting. You'll want to get a shower afterwards, believe me, or have a drink of something. Stiff vodka or something like that, because he's absolutely disgraceful. So any man who says now in 2021 that he is shocked, or that he is, oh, I'm shocked and disturbed at my own obliviousness, as someone said on Sky News yesterday, is just lying. Sorry, they're lying. And however sincere that person was in that Sky News discussion yesterday, that you've got to be lying to yourself. You've got to be lying, mate, because you cannot be saying with any degree of credibility in 2021, or in any year, really, that you didn't know this happened. I talked about this yesterday. I'm a man, and I will never know what it's like to be a woman, right? I will say this, right? I will say this, that I want people, specifically men, and specifically straight men, and specifically straight white men who may be listening right now, to think about the kinds of things a woman goes through, but for any man, to think about that. What she has to go through every hour of every day, every minute of every day. glaring, staring, aggressive approaches, unwanted attention, upskirting, staring at her breast and not at her face when you're talking to her. I mean, that's just the tippy top of the iceberg. And then it's something else that happens. And then it's an overzealous hotel employee who wants to check up on you and see that you're all right. Or it's something else that happens. And then you're going home from work and you have to look around and worry about how you're going to get home. How is that woman going to get home? How is she going to get from A? You know, if you're a woman, listen to this. You know, you've been through this. You know exactly what I'm telling men to think about here. Because you've gone through it every second of your life. And you're thinking, how are you getting home tonight? Is my Uber driver going to rape me? If I take this Uber, will he take me to my address or will he take me to some alley or some forest somewhere? By the way, when I say this, dear listener, this has happened. There are Uber drivers who have done this. Taxi drivers of any group. I don't want to single out Uber. Oh, God. Even though, Uber had and still probably does have a lot of issues. And their harassment of women, sexual harassment of women on the job at Uber was off the charts here in Northern California, right here, just a few miles down the road from here in this part of California. And so, yeah, maybe I should be mentioning them by name. But my point is that those are the calculations, right? A woman has to be thinking about all those things, and men generally don't have to. Men don't have to think about that. They don't have to think about that. And there's so many other situations. And I get it. I know someone's going to tell me, well, there's some women who proposition themselves to taxi drivers. That's got nothing to do with this, what I'm talking about. Nothing. That is the exception that proves the rule. That does not change the things that a woman has to go through every single day. Do you not understand, at least, even if you've not experienced it as a man, and you won't? Do you not think about it for a second, what a woman has to go through on a daily, every second basis? That's what I'm talking about. And I think that not only do boys and men have to be educated in unlearning all of this, the institutions have got to be brought to bear. They've got to. And we've got to force it, and we've got to get rid of these places that do this. And reform is not the answer, because you've been reforming for hundreds of years and women are still being violently attacked. They're being murdered. We've got to take some real action proactively here. And we really do have to build movements. We have to build coalitions. There's lots of movements already out there. I don't mean to suggest that there aren't, but we've got to keep building coalitions, movements, consolidating them, building new ones, coalescing with others, being partnered with other movements. And let's get intersectional and let's get busy. Let's get busy, y'all. Let's do this. Let's start transforming this 21st century into a century and into a world that from here on in starts to see girls and women as full equals and as people, not objects. And we need to get rid of a system that doesn't do those things. That's not even radical. That's fundamental humanity talking. That's not about radical and left and right and lefty. And that's just labeling. All that left-right stuff is labels to me. It's labels to keep you from doing the things you know are right. You know that that's right. You know it's right to have everybody be seen as human beings. You know it's right to treat women as human beings. You know that. And any kind of, well, they like to be treated like this, or they like to be treated like that, is a byproduct of the whole bloomin' patriarchy in the first place. Why does someone want to be treated that way? We've got a culture and a system around us that's telling people to treat women like this. Look at the ads. Look at the movies. Look at the magazines. Look at the shows. Look at the language that's being spoken. I talk about language all the time. I must bore you to tears about language. But this is the kind of language I'm talking about. I'm not talking about bonjour and auf Wiedersehen. And I'm talking about the English language, but the kinds of things we're saying in the language. And as I said a couple episodes ago, maybe yesterday or the day before, the language reflects how you think about things. Language reflects the society you're in, and that reflects the system that creates the society you're in, that governs it. And the language we use reflects and is of the system. So if you say things like, well, well, she was walking at 9 o'clock, instead of saying she was walking and some man attacked her, who cares what time of day it was? When you speak the language of, well, she went up to his hotel room at 3 a.m., what do you expect? That's the language that's the trouble. That's the problem. That's the language of the patriarchy. That's the language of justification of those who think that men are entitled to treat women like this, that men are entitled to do these things to women violently. Oh, well, she went up there at 3 a.m. She knows what she was getting into. What do you mean? So you're telling me it's okay to just sit with a man being a predator? That's okay? Is that really okay? Really? And not dealing with the predator and his violence and dealing with a system that allows this violence, that protects it? But your focus is who and what time of day or night it was? Well, she knew what she was getting into. What was she getting into? She's a human being. What was she getting into? I want someone to answer that question while I leave you for this moment with the esteemed Member of Parliament, and I do respect her a great deal, Jess Phillips, Jess as in Sam, Jess Phillips from Birmingham in England. Yesterday in the House of Commons during an International Women's Day debate, she read out the names of 118 women who had been killed in the UK by men over the last year. And I'm going to leave you with her reading out every last one of those names.
These are the women killed in the UK where a man has been convicted or charged as the primary perpetrator in the case. Vanita Knoll, Tracy Kidd, Nellie Mustafa, Zahida B, Josephine K, Shadika Mohsin Patel, Maureen Kidd, Wendy Morse, Nagiba Alariki, Elsie Smith, Kelly Stewart, Gwendolyn Bound, Ruth Williams, Victoria Woodall, Kelly Fitzgibbons, killed alongside her 2 daughters, Caroline Walker, Katie Walker, Zubaydah Salangi, Betty Dobbin, Sonia Kelvey, Marianne Ishmael, Daniela Espirita Santo, Ruth Brown, Denise Keane Barnett Simmons, Jadwiga Segjelski, Emma Jane McPartland, Louise Atkinson, Silk Hirschon Jones, Hyacinth Morris, Louise Smith, Claire Perry, Aya Hashem, Melissa Belshaw, Yvonne Lawson McCann, Lindsay Alcock, Anita Zadun, Nicoletta Zadun, Mandy Houghton, Amy Leanne Stringfellow, Bieber Henry, Nicole Smallman, Dawn Bennett, Gemma Marjoram, Carolina Zia Vincian, Rosemary Hill, Jackie Hoadley, Cole May Loy, Kerry Woolley, Shelley Clark, Bernadette Walker, Stella Frew, Dawn Fletcher, Deborah Jones, Patricia Wybeck, Theresia Gordon, Esther Egbon, Suzanne Baird, Belvinda Gahir, Linda Cooper, Lorraine Cox, Suzanne Winnister, Maria Howarth, Abida Karam, Saman Mir Sanchavi, Vayan Mangrio, Purna Kameshwari Sivaraj, killed alongside her 3-year-old son, Louise Rump, Julie Williams, Rhonda Humphreys, Nicole McGregor, Angela Webber, Carol Wright, Sarah Smith, Ildiko Bettasan, Kimberly Deakin, Mary Gladders, Paula Leather, Caroline Kyle, Lauren May Bloomer, Hansa Patel, Helen Bannister, Marta Vento, Andrea Rodriguez Guilherme, Joanna Baruca, Azaria Williams, Catherine Granger, Eileen Dean, Sue Addis, Carol Hart, Jacqueline Price, Mary Wells, Tiprat Argatu, Christy Fruin, Sawad Belaha, Anne Turner, Nataya Elliott Cleverly, Rosemary Tinton, Ranjit Gill, Helen Joy, Emma Robertson, Nicole Anderson, Linda Maggs, Carol Smith, Sophie Moss, Christina Rowe, Suzanne Hanaby, Michelle Lizanek, Vyaslora Mesjuazga, Judith Rayard, Anna Oskiankova, Tina Eyre, Katie Simpson, Benelin Berg and her 2-year-old daughter, Samantha Heap, Geeta Goyal, Imogen Buyazjuk, Beijing Zhu. There has been much debate over what I would say at the end of the list. Her name rings out across all of our media. We have all prayed that the name of Sarah Everard would never be on any list. Let's pray every day and work every day to make sure nobody's name ends up on this list again.
Jess Phillips, and we have to stop this violence. We have to stop this violence. We have to end this violence against women, against all kinds of women, all different types of women. It doesn't matter who. And forgive me for saying the word types. I think that's really not the word I should be using. So I'm sorry. I am so conscious of this now. And I just think that we have to start being conscious of what it is we're saying. And because we live in a society that's so ingrained as this one is, and as the one, in general, wherever you are in the world, it's so easy because we're so used to speaking this language. And it does take time to even recognize that you're speaking it and recognize what it is you're saying in it. So you do have to take the time to do the work. I know some people are going to say, oh God, this is so exhausting. Why? I just want to live my life. I've got so much going on as it is. I get that. And for you, this is not something that's important. Perhaps. I mean, I've got lots going on too. And I know a lot of people listening here, I imagine, have lots going on. But I think this is part of what we have to do to be better people. And if we want a better world, you can't have a better world without better people in it. And you can't ask for a better world and to strive for one without also, in fact, first striving to improve yourself and be your better self. You just can't. You just cannot do that. You know? You just can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. So we'll see what happens with Sarah Everard. We need to, again, end violence against trans women, black trans women in particular, Latinx, brown trans women. We need to end this violence. We need to end this. And I'm going to keep talking about black trans lives and black trans mattering. Black trans lives matter. I'm going to keep doing that because we have to be intersectional. And we have to even be more than that. We have to be empathetic and open-hearted, and we need to welcome people instead of being afraid and fearful of them. How are you going to have a better world if you don't learn how to embrace others? I'm not saying you have to like people personally, but I'm just talking about in general. And you're going to start fear-mongering and demonizing a group because of your fear of them and your hatred of them? Really? What about if you, as someone said way back when, turn swords into plowshares? I think Dr. King was one of the people that said that at one point. I think it's biblical too, by the way. But what if we started to do those kinds of things? You know, I mean, there are some black communities that are roiled in fear around trans people, roiled in fear among people who are gay, roiled in fear. I mean, this is true in a lot of communities. Doesn't make any of it right. I'm not saying it is. But I'm telling you, I know people whose families have disowned them. Disowned them. Literally. Don't speak to them anymore. Because their fear is governing and their hatred is governing. And they're not going to talk to this person who's gay anymore because they're afraid and they hate. Those are the reasons, right? It's not because the person's gay or trans. It's because the person doing the hating is afraid and the person hates. And that person has to be investigated, not the trans person. And what are they afraid of anyway? Fear. If it's true that it's fear, then what is it that you're afraid of? And why? When you're living in a patriarchy that teaches you to fear, that its whole basis in law and in fact is about fear-mongering. Here's a real easy example of this, folks. Dear listener, the easy example is, I thought he was going to pull out a gun. I thought he was going to shoot me. I thought he had a gun. That's fear-based, right? That's actually built into law. The reasonable officer standard, the reasonable person standard. When a police officer testifies that most often he, thought that that black person was going to shoot him, that's fear. And that's what connects with a jury, mostly white jury. But that connects with jurors who are black too. That might connect with some juror that's Asian or brown. It's this fear-based language that the actual structures and the institutions use. This is the same language that you and I speak daily without thinking about it. And that's what I'm going back to, which is trying to think and be conscious of what you're saying. Be conscious of it. People go on Twitter and say all kinds of stuff. I mean, you look at me in the same vein, so I'm not going to leave myself out of that. and sometimes don't think about what they're saying or doing. You know, we all make mistakes. I'm not saying that people can't make mistakes, but it's different from mistakes. This is about how we view the world and what we are assessing about the world when we talk about it. None of this, I want to remind people listening, none of this is about semantics. This is not about semantics. Someone will say, well, this is semantics. It's not, because the words you speak, so as a man or person thinketh, he or she or they acteth. And that's the key. How you speak in terms of what you're speaking, I should say. The things you say reflect the way you feel, and you act often, if not most times, on how and on the basis of your feelings about something, or what you think about it. So that's why these things are really important. This unlearning has to start with all of us. Think of all the ways that you, or think of one way that you are not strong enough in something. And strong, I mean, you know, you're still having issues grasping something or other in your life. Whether it's something psychological or whether it's something different than that. Think of how you can try to strengthen. What weakness do you have that you can tidy up or work on? And I mean, that's how this exercise really starts. That's how some of this unlearning begins. And these are the kinds of things that I say to people when I try to, do education with some people about this, men and boys. And these are the building blocks for how we can be better, how we can begin to genuflect and move in that direction as people. And this also applies to women, by the way. But because much of this episode has been geared again around issues of violence against women and what happened to Sarah Everard and what happens to women all over the globe, by the way, that don't get the kind of coverage. Because black women and brown women are umpteenth times more likely to be attacked in certain countries. In some, black and brown women in some countries are, or maybe many countries, maybe all, are more likely to be attacked. I have to go look at that stat. I know, because it may vary from country to country. And instances of domestic violence, I think, are lower in black and brown households versus white ones in the United States. And someone will say, well, that's because there's more white people. But it's not necessarily so obvious. It's not that cut and dried, I don't think. It could be proportionate and disproportionate. But again, I need to go refine these stats. But the bottom line is that women of all kinds are in danger, because black trans women are being murdered on these streets here in the United States. I mean, practically on a daily basis. I mean, honestly, last year, the year before, I think it was something like close to 50. I mean, 50 trans people being murdered, trans women, black trans women being murdered. And I don't know that any of their killers have been found. I don't know that's even happened. That's the thing, the institutions. What the institutions must do, what we must challenge them to do, and we really must, vanquish this patriarchy here, because it ain't serving us well. It ain't. And what we can do on a small basis in our own lives, I think those are really important keys. I mean, I listened to this discussion yesterday on Sky. I listened to it. And, you have someone talking about how police in England, Metropolitan Police or whichever police there are, there's many different constabularies and West Yorkshire Police and this police and that police up and down the country. But you imagine this? Doesn't surprise me, but I just want to say it, that police officers wanted rape victims to hand over their phones to them. And because the rape victims, the survivors, refused to, the cases were dropped. Really? Why does a woman's phone have to be handed to the police? And why, if a woman who is a survivor refuses to hand over that phone, why is it that you then turn around and drop the case? The prosecution drops the case. The prosecutors wanted to see, not the police, the prosecutors wanted to see two survivors' phones. So the two survivors, the two female survivors of rape, said, no, we're not handing our phones over to you. Prosecutors, do your job. And the prosecutors said, oh, you're not, and this is me saying this, paraphrasing, right? So, oh, figuratively, I'm saying. So, oh, you're not going to hand over your phones to us? Well, we're dropping the case. And they dropped the case. They dropped the case. The rape case against these assailants. They dropped the case. And the survivors were left holding the bag, left holding the scars. No justice. I mean, there's so many cases of this in England. So when people say that they're shocked, men saying they're shocked and surprised at what goes on, they're just lying to you. They're lying. Prosecutions of rape went down in England over the last few years. You've had the rape law in Sweden after a horrendous case back in the early 2000s, 2000, whatever it was, 15 to 16. And that was an infamous case. And a judge on the bench basically said, I'm paraphrasing, that the woman deserved it. And that's the thinking around so many people, including some women, who sit there and think, well, she had it coming. I mean, so this is the patriarchy that has to be really, we have to really bore holes in this and let it crumble. Because you've got some women thinking this. And it's not just generational stuff. It's some women today still think this stuff. It's really, I mean, we got a lot of work to do. And this isn't going to just happen in one day. But we got to start somewhere. Welcome back. So now, the American Rescue Plan. Well, American President Joe Biden last night gave his first primetime address as president, just about 7 or 8 weeks, 7.5 weeks or 7 weeks into his first term in office. He gave a speech I thought that was very good. He spoke about the American Rescue Plan, which was passed by the House of Representatives on Wednesday. It was just a great thing. It was great that it was done. Now, look, I have voiced my complaints about where the bill falls short, where the bill should have had a $15 an hour federal minimum wage provision. That's the Bernie Sanders amendment that was voted down, that Vice President Kamala Harris did not stand up for and did not do her job to overrule the parliamentarian. And I know that's a lot of politics involved. Vice President Harris was in the Senate in the past. I think that's a lot of politics there. I'm not justifying it. She should have done her job. And thanks to those of you who did make phone calls into the White House. And Vice President Harris has the power. She should have done it. She didn't do it. She's going to be breaking ties down the road here in this 117th Congress. And I don't know if she also made the calculation that that was something that she had to look at. But again, the other side of that argument is the Senate parliamentarian is an unelected bureaucrat. That person has no political power at all. So who cares what the Senate parliamentarian has to say? It can be overruled. Not here. In the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson overruled a civil servant who made a big decision that said that Priti Patel, in his estimation, violated the ministerial code, which is very serious. Boris Johnson overruled. He overruled the civil servant who'd been in the position for dozens of years, by the way, like 50, almost 50 years. And as soon as Prime Minister Boris Johnson in England, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, as soon as he overruled the civil servant and said no, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary in England, in the UK, she did not violate the ministerial code. Overruled. As soon as he said that, the 50-year civil servant quit. He said, I'm done, I'm finished, I resign. And he resigned. Good civil... This guy, and I forget his name, was such a well-respected, really good civil servant. Loyal, he stood up for civil servants everywhere, and boom, gone. So, again, different country, different scenario, but why couldn't Vice President Harris simply just overrule someone who did far less than what happened in the situation with the ministerial code and with the civil servant in England? Why couldn't she have done that here in the US? Why couldn't a very powerful vice president, why couldn't she have done that? But anyway, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but not entirely. But President Biden yesterday gave, I thought it was a very good speech. I think his speech was good. The American Rescue Plan, he touted it. There's a whole website now about the American Rescue Plan. For those of you who didn't watch or listen to the speech, which lasted around 25 minutes or so, and it was a good speech. And I think that President Biden, I think, had a better week this week because he actually also signed the bill that he was actually supposed to sign today. He signed the bill, the American Rescue Plan, into law yesterday. That's Thursday, March the 11th, 2021. And quite frankly, he should have signed it on Wednesday immediately. He should have signed it on Wednesday when it was passed by the House. The Senate had already passed it over the weekend. The House passed it on Wednesday. Why didn't President Biden sign it on Wednesday immediately? If everybody needs help, or if people need help, and if help is on the way, that my quibble was, why didn't he sign it immediately? Why was he going to actually originally sign it 2 days later, which would have been today? Following tweets from the likes of yours truly and many others, I'm sure, President Biden signed it yesterday. And good, I'm glad he did, because there's so many people in this country who are hurting right now. And you do just kind of undercut your message, speaking about urgency and help is on the way, and you are going to sit on signing a bill for 2 days? Well, thankfully, it was only 24 hours. And in the speech yesterday, which I thought was, again, as I keep repeating, a very good speech, President Biden focused on the American Recovery Act. He focused on 1 year later. We are now 1 year and 1 day past the beginning of this horrible, horrible pandemic that continues. It really did strike us March 11th of 2020. That was actually the day when the World Health Organization declared it to be coronavirus, COVID-19, to be a global pandemic. That's when they first declared it. So that's why it was done yesterday, March 11th. 1 year has passed, and now 1 year and 1 day. And he talked about he paid tribute to the bravery of the American public and how most people in the United States are abiding by these rules set by the CDC. Remember to wear a mask when you're out, please. Remember to wear 2 of them. I think preferably 2. I wear 2. I've been wearing 2 now for a few months, a few weeks, I should say. And one of the brands I recommend, if I haven't, I've said it at least once before, is the brand of mask, the light blue mask, where you see the light blue facing out to the world and the white part of the mask facing you. Those kinds of masks, the best one of those kinds is the Born Basic brand. And I know I'm plugging them. BORN Basic, BASIC, Basic. And those are really good masks. Those are the 3-ply. Those are the ones that you regularly see people with. The most common ones, those kinds of masks. I'm not saying that they're wearing the Born Basic brand, but the Born Basic brand is really good. I find that it covers not just your nose and mouth, but it also goes down to under your chin and even a bit more than that. And you can spread that mask so that it really covers a whole lot more of your face. And I think that mask is really good. It's a good mask. It's not N95. N95 is really one I'd like to wear. But for the time being, I'm going to be wearing 2 masks, and I'm going to rather continue to. And the mask I wear on top of that is one with a thicker material. And in fact, there was an episode I did, and it's on the Politicrat.com website. So please go to thepoliticrat.com. And that website, you go and scroll down a little bit, you'll see video of Dr. Cindy Duke from an episode we did in December of 2020, where we're talking about masks, and I'm holding up the 2 masks that I wear, or at least 2 masks that I wear now. And of course I change them and change a mask every day. I know some people don't do that because they literally can't afford to buy a new set of masks, but people really should be using different masks. And quite frankly, let's go even further. Our society should have these masks for free. There are countries all over the world where we have these masks for free. In all these other countries, they're free at dispensers at subway stations in Germany and Hong Kong. And you just go and you don't even have to put money in, I don't think. You just take them. They hand them out in Paris on the subway. You got people handing the masks out to people for free. We need to be doing that here in the United States. We need to be doing that in the United Kingdom and everywhere. Hand these things out for free. And they may hand them out in some places in the UK, but I'm not aware of that. Certainly not in England, I'm not aware of that. But there may well be. But the Politicrat.com has, you go on the website there, at the bottom of the website, you'll see near the bottom of it, or you'll see it in, as you scroll down, you'll see a video, you'll see Dr. Cindy Duke, and she'll talk about mask wearing, and I will talk about it too. And I've got a separate YouTube video on the Politicrat YouTube page, and you'll find it. There's loads of videos there, and the Politicrat channel was the one with the red and white building. You'll see it lit up at night. You'll see that channel, and that's the one. And one of those videos is of me actually showing you how to wear a mask and how to put one on. I'm sure you know by now how to do it, but I think it's good to see visually how it's done, because you may not be putting it on correctly, and I think that's important. But President Biden was talking about mask wearing yesterday. He was talking about being able to properly put these masks on, and that vaccines are on the way, and he talked about every American adult being eligible for a vaccine no later than May the 1st. I think that's really good. And he made it clear that it doesn't mean that everybody is going to be in line waiting for one on May 1st and being vaccinated by then. But what he's saying is that everyone can get in line by May 1st. Let me rephrase that. He's not saying that everyone's going to be vaccinated by May 1st. He is saying that every American adult will be eligible by May 1st. And that you've got to just get on, just get into the process of getting in line. Hopefully I cleared that up. I hope it's a bit clearer. If it's not, there is the American Rescue Plan that talks in detail about, and I didn't give out the website yet, but there is the American Rescue Plan that is very, very clear about all of these things. And you go to whitehouse.gov/American-Rescue-Plan. whitehouse.gov/American-Rescue-Plan. I'm going to link to the liner notes of this episode, that particular website, so you can look at it. It's very comprehensive. it is on the front page of, you will see the American Rescue Plan, President Biden's plan to provide direct relief to Americans contain COVID and rescue the economy. And it's very detailed. I've read some of it. And it gives you an idea of how these payments of this brand new $1.9 trillion plan, it's the most money ever passed in a legislative bill to help the American public in the history of the United States. It's the most, the biggest ever, $1.9 trillion. And on this website, the American Rescue Plan website that the White House issued yesterday, for the first time, it details how you will get your payment if you are in the United States, if you are eligible for it. And I know that President Biden did lower the eligibility, did change the number of people who will get this. But there is detail about that. And he had said, I believe last night, that some people will start to, certainly the press secretary, Jen Psaki, did, that she had said that that Americans will, some people will start to receive their payments this weekend in their bank accounts. And, we're just a month away or so from tax time, here in the U.S. So, if you are someone who meets the eligibility requirements of the American Rescue Plan bill that was passed on Wednesday and signed on Thursday, then for goodness sake, you need to get to this website. Take a look at what you can expect to receive. And part of this plan is the $1,400 checks, which, of course, people were saying should be $2,000. But what the Biden administration has said is, no, this is $2,000. This is just the $1,400 remaining. And you had $600 back in December. That's what is being said. But under this plan, as was spoken by the president last night, $1,400 will be going to all eligible Americans who meet the guidelines. Families of four will each get the $1,400. Families, however many, as long as they meet the eligibility guidelines. Quite frankly, I think that there really shouldn't be, except for the people who are wealthy and who are really getting along fine, there shouldn't be any kind of real barriers to getting this money for people. I really don't think so. But nonetheless, that's the American Rescue Plan in part. Then there's also, I forgot, the other thing is, for those who are collecting unemployment benefits, you will get an additional $300 added to the state benefits that you get ordinarily. So that's the other thing to note. I've gone through that ad infinitum. I've told you that it was a Democrat named Joe Manchin of West Virginia who said, no, I'm going to join the Republicans and I'm going to campaign and campaign for a $100 reduction in your unemployment benefits. Hooray! So that's what happened. And as a result of that, and the attendant compromising that Democrats are wont to do, you now have $100 less in your additional unemployment benefit. It's like the pay rise in England, isn't it, for the nurses? Boris Johnson tells the NHS nurses, sorry, I'm going to give you a 1% pay rise. 1%. It's really a kick in the teeth. It's kind of, I don't know what's worse. Both of them are worse. What's worse, lowering someone's unemployment benefits by $100 or giving a nurses a 1% pay rise? Both of them are bad. Those are both bad things. We shouldn't, I'm kind of answering my own question here. I think both of those things are horrendous. I don't think it should be about which is worse, actually. It should be both of them are really horrendous, and you need to do a lot better. But look, the American Rescue Plan is in the books. We're going to be hearing from people, I'm sure. In fact, people are already telling their stories about all of this. on the website. I've been looking at them, and also actually not on the website. They actually tell you if you'd like to share your story. I'm sorry, let me get that clear. If you'd like to share your story, you do that on this particular website, and on C-SPAN today and yesterday evening, there were callers calling in about how has the last year been for them with this virus. Some people were saying, they were at wit's end. Some people were saying, well, I don't wear a mask. Other people were saying, I'm not going to get vaccinated. Oh, come on. See, C-SPAN, you get these callers who are spreading propaganda and garbage and lies about vaccinations being terrible and not good for you. And I know there were some incidents in France or wherever it was yesterday or wherever where people ended up dying from taking AstraZeneca. It might have been in England, in the UK maybe, or in Wales or somewhere in the UK. It could have been Wales. It could have been, I don't remember where it was in the world actually, but there was an incident when that happened where someone took the Oxford vaccine and they died, and it was due to all kinds of complications and things, connected and unconnected and whatever else. But there's a lot of lies going on about vaccination. So, please get vaccinated. Please, please, please. And I know that there are people who are resistant to doing it. As I've said, there's lots of reasons and very good ones because of the violence against black people by the government, by the medical profession. And we're seeing it right now with Dr. Susan Moore, who back in November or December, I think November of last year, died because some doctor in her own blooming profession said, oh, no, you can go home, you can sleep it off, you're not really that sick. And she died. Doctor, black woman, black female doctor. So, yes, there's obviously some skepticism. And that's just one case. There all these experiments being done on us, and on Native communities and on, this is the thing. And yeah, there are going to be people who are going to hesitate and say no. Or at least that they just want to see what's going on. That's not even hesitancy, really. That's just, again, it's people just wanting to get more information. Nothing wrong with that. And I would say stay away from Facebook and all of these other platforms, social media-wise, Twitter, that give you this lie about, they put something in the vaccine. That lie is being sent to black and brown neighborhoods by right-wing and racist organizations, because their whole thing is we need to reduce the black and brown populations. That's what that's really about, folks. Come on now. Let's get real. It's like the voter suppression I talked about earlier this week in Georgia, in Arizona, where they're passing literally hundreds and hundreds of pieces of legislation in their state legislatures that is designed to and that will curb black and brown people and young people's ability to vote. Same thing. Let me lie about the vaccine and say, they're putting stuff in it. How come they're only sending that message, as odious as it is? Why are they sending that message only to black and brown neighborhoods? Come on, folks. And it wouldn't be right if they were sending it to white neighborhoods either, by the way. None of it's correct. None of it's right. It's abhorrent. But what I'm saying is, why would they only send that to certain neighborhoods and communities if they didn't have a larger agenda? Come on now. Let's get with it here. It's always about something else. Money is among that. That's something else, as is racism and as is genderism and, those kinds of things. In this case, certainly racism and eugenics and all this disgusting, grotesquely racist stuff, that evil that these groups, white groups, are doing. So the American Rescue Plan, those of you in the United States will be very pleased to know that it is up and running. The website is, again, it's whitehouse.gov/American-rescue-plan. Please go there. I will send a link. It will be linked to this particular episode in the liner notes of it. And I hope that you get your checks and all that good stuff because, people are starving. They're starving. There's so many people in this country who are still depending on food banks. So many people. The poor are always depending on it. I'm talking about people in all different structures and strictures. I mean, the very rich are not doing it. They're probably sending an errand boy to collect their box and give it to them. The rich find a way, don't they? The powerful find a way to skip the line. And this is going on in other countries as well. Food bank lines. It's probably going on, I'm sure it's going on in the UK. Food bank lines going on the African continent. Lines of people waiting for food in the richest country on earth. I think it's despicable. It's despicable. I think there was, though, a note of optimism from President Biden last night that I actually liked. It was realistic, too. It wasn't this pie-in-the-sky, rose-colored glasses stuff. I mean, Lynn Anderson certainly would agree. Lynn Anderson, of course, she, the singer of Another Day, who sang such great songs as I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. That's my favorite song of hers. I really love that song. I should play it. Oh dear, just a little bit of it. But she would have loved that. I mean, it was sunny, but it was realistic. It was optimistic, but it had realism. And Biden appealed to the better self in us and not the baser self, which is really good after what we've had here. And he had a better week this week. I think the last couple of weeks, definitely not. But I think this week, he's had a better week. I think he closes out the work week, or the Monday to Friday work week. Because some of us, we don't limit it to just 5 days. We're not so fortunate, some of us. But I think he closed out this week fairly well. And I think the Democrats this week had a very good week. They passed the amended bill from the Senate. Yesterday, they passed a background checks bill, specifically a bill that would extend the time for background checks to be conducted. I thought that was good. The time will now be extended from 3 days to 20 days. So that's from 3 days to almost 3 weeks. I think that's really a good thing. That didn't get a whole lot of press coverage, at least, and I don't watch the corporate news media anymore, so maybe I will be completely wrong. But based on what I saw reading online papers of record, I didn't see a whole big, that didn't get big headlines. But it should. If it's not in today, it should get big headlines, because that's really important. With all these shootings and the daily shootings that take place in this country, oh my goodness, in neighborhoods that are, we know about Chicago and Oakland and Detroit and Detroit and East St. Louis and Illinois. And my gosh, this goes on all over the place. The gunfire in domestic violence situations. So I think that this was a really good bill. And the House passed that yesterday. It's H.R. 8. Then there was another bill dealing with something else that got passed, and now I forget what that is. So the House Democrats had a very good week this week. Really good. Also, there was the Senate had a very good week. The Senate Democrats had a very good week this week too, because they confirmed Merrick Garland as Attorney General. I thought that was good. He actually only got 60 some odd votes, 64 votes, I think, which was well below what I predicted earlier this week. So I got it wrong. I got it completely wrong. I had predicted he was going to get in the high 80s to 90s to the early 90s in terms of the number of senators that would vote for him. I was even taken a little aback by the fact that only 60 or so, 64, joined by a few Republicans, only 64 senators voted for Merrick Garland to be Attorney General. That's just ridiculous. I mean, look, he's confirmed. I don't think Merrick Garland gives two rats patooties about only getting 64 votes. He got more than enough votes. You need a majority vote, if I'm not mistaken. It's not supermajority. It's a simple 50 plus 1 in order to be confirmed for these cabinet positions. So, yeah, Merrick Garland's in. He's the new Attorney General. And that began this week a new chapter in the Attorney General's office, in the Justice Department. And I'm looking forward to that. Now, Vanita Gupta and Kristen Clark and Lisa Monaco, to my knowledge, have not yet been confirmed. I'm sure that's going to come. If not this week, then it's probably going to come next week, and they'll get confirmed. They'll be voted on. But the Senate had a good week. The Senate Democrats had a good week this week. Senator Schumer got to continue his victory lap. I think he should take it. I know some people, again, as I said last week, will be upset at him because they perceive that Joe Manchin got the rule of the roost, the run of the place. And I think they'd be right. I think he did for a while there. But when it comes down to it, despite yours perhaps, and definitely my misgivings about some important aspects of the American Rescue Plan, Joe Manchin did vote for it. So, of course, after he compromised it, the point is he voted for it. Every Democrat voted for it. So it was a good week for the Democrats in the Senate, a good week for the House Democrats, a good week for the Democratic Party overall. Despite my concerns about the messaging, the results show that it was a good week because they got a lot of good legislation passed. And one of the things you're going to hear from me if you continue to listen to this podcast, one of the things I've done from the start with this podcast is to, when I can and where available, bring you news of what the legislatures did, whether it's in the House or the Senate, in the legislative branch of government, whichever. I will tell you. I had told you about the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, which still has not been passed in the Senate. That's got to be a focus now too. I will tell you about all of these other measures that get passed. To the best of my recollection and knowledge, I will inform you about them so that you know, so that you have an idea that the Democrats are doing something. Because, again, as I said earlier this week, they are not the best messengers. And as I also said this week, I don't think they want to be. I think this is deliberate because it's the 21st century. And if you can't get someone to give you a bumper sticker message, then that's not because you can't do it. That's because you don't want to. I know I'm rehashing territory from a day or two or three ago, but again, I just like to underline these things so that people are clear. But nonetheless, again, this was a good week for Democrats. This was a bounce back week as far as I'm concerned. Now, was everything perfect this week? Of course it wasn't. It never will be. And I should stop saying, was it perfect? Is it not? No one's perfect. Of course, we all know that. But this was a good week. A bounce back week for President Biden. I'm going to keep doing this every week. I'm going to kind of give it to the best of, as consistently as I can, give my evaluation of what the week looked like for President Biden and what the week looked like for Democrats. And also maybe locally, you would have to assess what that's like in your community because, they wouldn't be able to do that, would I now? All the different communities in the United States would not really be something I could do, as you can understand. But I do want to say, again, this is a major piece of legislation, this American Rescue Plan. It's a major piece of legislation. It's the most money ever given out to help the American public. And quite frankly, it could be higher, right? We always can strive. Like I said earlier, we shouldn't ever settle. We should always strive to do better. And if indeed it turns out, and I think it will turn out, that there will be another package that will be needed, that's my uneducated opinion and guess. I think that it's going to have to go north of 1.9 trillion. It's going to have to be something like twice that money, so that we're talking $4 trillion. I mean, we give out all of these cash bailouts to banks. We give these cash bailouts to billionaires. We give them tax cuts. They don't have to pay income tax federally. I mean, Amazon doesn't pay any income tax. Jeff Bezos makes trillions of dollars. He made it during the pandemic. He made billions, made about $4 or $5 billion during the pandemic selling stocks. So my goodness, if he makes $4 or $5 billion on paper in his sleep, then my goodness me, you can't do a $5 trillion or $4 trillion rescue plan? Of course you can. Of course you can. We must continue to do better. We must do better. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.